Here's something that should make every world leader lose sleep. While diplomatic talks about ending the Ukraine war dominate headlines, Putin's military machine just executed a lightning-fast territorial grab that could reshape the entire conflict overnight. Russian forces have launched what military analysts are calling a sudden thrust into eastern Ukrainian territory, specifically targeting areas east of the mining town of Dobropia. This aggressive move comes at a strategically calculated moment, just days before Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are scheduled to meet in Alaska to discuss ending the war. But here's where it gets controversial. Trump has already signaled that any peace deal will involve land swapping between the warring nations, a proposal that flies directly in the face of Ukraine's constitution. According to Ukraine's DeepState war mapping system, which uses open-source intelligence data, Russian forces have rapidly pushed northward in two separate advances, covering up to 10 kilometers, approximately 6.2 miles, in what appears to be a coordinated effort to seize complete control of Ukraine's Donetsk region. The advances occurred near 3 villages along the front line connecting the Ukrainian cities of Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka. President Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't caught off guard. He had already warned that Moscow was making movements that indicate preparations for new offensive operations. Ukrainian and Russian military bloggers alike have raised alarm bells, suggesting these advances could create severe complications for Kyiv's defensive strategies. And this is the part most people miss. The timing isn't coincidental. These military moves are happening precisely as Trump prepares for his Friday summit with Putin in Alaska, where the two leaders plan to hammer out terms for ending the conflict. Zelensky has expressed cautious support for Trump's peace efforts, stating that we all support President Trump's determination, and together we must shape positions that will not allow Russia to deceive the world once again. However, there's a massive legal roadblock that could derail any peace negotiations entirely. Any agreement requiring Ukraine to surrender or exchange territory with Russia would violate the country's constitution, a fact that puts Zelensky in an impossible position. The Ukrainian president has firmly rejected any deal involving territorial concessions, declaring that we will not give Russia any awards for what it has done, and that Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. These statements came after Trump suggested that territorial swapping would benefit both sides. For Zelensky personally, accepting such a deal would spell political disaster and likely trigger massive public outrage after more than 3 years of Ukrainian bloodshed and sacrifice. More importantly, he lacks the constitutional authority to approve such concessions, since altering Ukraine's 1991 borders contradicts the nation's founding legal document. Currently, freezing the current battle lines appears to be the only outcome most Ukrainians might reluctantly accept. But wait, there's more drama unfolding. In what can only be described as a geographical gaffe, Trump announced from the White House press briefing room, "I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday," apparently forgetting that Alaska is actually part of the United States. This slip occurred while he was discussing crime rates in Washington, D.C. alongside Attorney General Pam Bondi, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and newly confirmed D.C. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro. Meanwhile, European Union leaders, excluding Hungary, released a coordinated statement Tuesday, emphasizing that the path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine. They stressed that any peace agreement must respect international law, including Ukraine's independence and territorial integrity, and that Ukraine must have the freedom to decide their own future. Military analysts are painting an increasingly urgent picture of the battlefield situation. Open-source investigators at DeepState describe the current conditions as quite chaotic, explaining that the enemy, having found gaps in the defense, is infiltrating deeper, trying to quickly consolidate and accumulate forces for further advancement. They believe Russia is attempting to exploit Ukraine's documented manpower shortages. The Institute for the Study of War offered a particularly sobering analysis, suggesting that while it's premature to call the Russian advances a full operational breakthrough, Moscow's forces are likely working to transform their tactical gains into something much more significant. They drew parallels to Russian tactics used in mid-April 2024, when similar tactical penetrations facilitated the seizure of operationally important territory northwest of Avdiivka. But here's the strategic calculation that should concern everyone. The think tank believes Russia is deliberately timing these advances to create favorable information conditions before the August 15th summit. Putin appears to be framing Russia's potential seizure of the Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions as inevitable, hoping to pressure Ukraine and Western allies into capitulating to Kremlin demands. The immediate battlefield reality is equally concerning. Russian forces are reportedly circling the major Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk, with military analysts using open-source information warning that the next 24 to 48 hours could prove critical. Losing Pokrovsk would hand Russia a significant battlefield victory right before the summit, while simultaneously complicating Ukrainian supply lines throughout the Donetsk region, where the Kremlin has concentrated its primary military efforts. A recent Russian missile attack on a Ukrainian military training facility killed 1 soldier and wounded 11 others, with cluster munitions striking soldiers as they rushed to protective shelters. Ukraine's military acknowledges the challenging situation, with the Donetsk region's Ukrainian military command posting on Facebook that while enemy soldiers infiltrating Ukrainian defensive lines face inevitable death, the overall situation remains difficult, unpleasant, and dynamic. Elena Beketova, a fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis, provided crucial context about why territorial concessions would be catastrophic. Even in Donetsk, Russia doesn't control the entire region. It's taken them 11 years to try to gain full access there. And giving up this territory would force Ukraine to abandon its fortifications and defense lines. For Russia, that would mean the ability to advance deeper into central and western Ukraine. She emphasized the long-term dangers. Even though Ukrainians understand they can't fully regain control of some regions right now, agreeing to such a deal would be like handing those areas to Russia as a neatly wrapped gift. Romanian President Nicu Jordan added his voice to the European chorus, stating that while he salutes Trump's efforts to end the war, peace cannot be built without Ukraine, without respecting its sovereignty and territorial integrity, and without the Ukrainian people freely deciding their future. So here's the million-dollar question that nobody seems willing to address directly. If constitutional law prevents Ukraine from legally ceding territory, and Russia continues gaining ground while peace talks approach, what exactly is Trump planning to negotiate? More controversially, should Ukraine be forced to choose between constitutional principles and ending a devastating war that has cost thousands of lives? And if territorial concessions are truly inevitable, as Putin seems to believe, shouldn't the international community be honest about what peace actually means in this context? What do you think? Is compromising on territorial integrity a reasonable price for peace? Or would such concessions simply reward aggression and set a dangerous precedent for future conflicts? Share your thoughts. This debate affects far more than just Ukraine and Russia.